Let's talk LinkedIn. Let's talk about what's working on LinkedIn and what's not. And more to the point, why you need to be using LinkedIn if you're job hunting. And ideally, you're using LinkedIn even if you're not job hunting. Here's the thing. LinkedIn is non-negotiable if you work in tech and you live in the West. There may be a few niche cases where it's not, like if you work in something government-oriented, but basically the majority of the tech industry recruits from LinkedIn. I would actually go as far to say recruits exclusively from LinkedIn. And I do use the word majority with caution in that I can always find new exceptions to every rule. But here's the thing, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. You're missing out not because it's an amazing social media platform. Hey, it's not the worst, but it's still social media. It's a networking platform, but it's still a form of social media. It's the feed is very much oriented to learning about things. And there's always a debate going on in the feed about how we should be using LinkedIn. And I'm just not that interested in that, to be honest. I think if you've got something interesting to say, it doesn't do you any harm sharing it. But if people are looking for people on LinkedIn and you're not on there, then that's a problem. Whenever I hire, even if somebody's come to me through a recommendation or they've come to me they've reached out to me and said, hey, are you hiring? And I happen to be, and we have a conversation, I go and check them out online. If they're not on LinkedIn, I want to know why. And I like to think of myself as a fairly open-minded because I work with people in this industry who are job hunting. I want to know why you're not on LinkedIn. Many people will go, well, I can't stalk you on LinkedIn. I can't find out about you. Therefore, I'm not even having a conversation. Think about when you've been a hiring manager. You will try and find reasons to cut the 100 people down to 10, as will recruiters. We're living in an era, in 2025, we are living in an era where recruiters are incredibly overworked. They have far more work on their plate than they did a couple of years ago. They're responsible for far more recs than ever before. They've got to take potentially the 1,000 applications and crunch that down. Now, we use AI to do that. That's a whole other conversation. But one of the ways of doing it, once you've got a long shortlist, excuse me for the strange comment there, but long shortlist, hopefully you all know what I'm talking about. One of the ways of doing that is to go and look at people on LinkedIn and see what they're saying. If you are therefore not on LinkedIn, that's a red flag. It is very easy to just drop you at that point. They can't get the information they need. They've got to drop somebody, you get dropped. Or your LinkedIn is not up to date. It talks about the wrong things. It doesn't talk about the thing that they're interested in you for. Okay, what happens? You get dropped. So you're missing out if you're job hunting. You're also missing out just in opportunities and the networking. Again, I say this all the time. Your network is your number one asset as a leader. Your network is the thing that will land you leadership jobs. It will open opportunities up for you. It creates jobs for you. If your network isn't strong, you are going to hit the glass ceiling. I think one of the things that really holds us up as women is that we inevitably have weaker networks than our male peers because we struggle. And again, massive generalization here. But we struggle with being accepted in a male-dominated environment. If you are in any form of minority, if you walk into a room and you are different, the human condition means put that person to one side, exclude them. We have to work hard to include somebody who's different. Therefore, being in a room or an industry, in the case of tech, that is male-dominated, you have to work harder at being accepted. Whether we have unconscious bias or not, which, by the way, we all do, it is just a thing. It's a human condition. Humans are unconsciously more inclined to socialize with people that act and feel and look like them, which is why early on in our careers, behaving like men tends to get us ahead, which that's a whole other conversation about how behaving like men stops getting you ahead at some point, especially as a leader. But men therefore end up in a male-dominated field such as tech with a stronger network on average than the women in the same situation. So unless you've worked really, really hard at building your network already, which some of you have, an amazing, massive kudos to you, you need a network. The easiest and fastest way to build your network is on LinkedIn, especially if, like me, you're an introvert or you're any form of neurodivergent, again, as me. I think it's just so much easier to hide behind the internet. And I like building my network one person at a time. And I say this as somebody who used to hate conversations. Now I have conversations every single day with strangers, but I've learned how to do it. And the power of LinkedIn to do that is immense. But to do that, you need to be on LinkedIn. If you aren't on LinkedIn, basically, this is damaging your career. So I want to talk to you today about the shifts you need to be making with your LinkedIn profile. The shifts you need to make in your mindset to be more optimistic and see the benefits. If you aren't seeing the benefits of LinkedIn, it's because it's not working for you. It's how you are going to get a job created for you. It's not just where jobs are. And I would always urge caution when applying for jobs on LinkedIn, to be brutally honest. That quick apply button means they're often oversubscribed, but there are a lot of listings on LinkedIn. A lot of companies advertise on LinkedIn exclusively, though not all. And that's kind of a hard thing to figure out, but some companies get discounts with LinkedIn or they get free advertising with LinkedIn. So some jobs are on there and they're not anywhere else, but your network can create opportunities for you. Your network can be the thing that opens a door for you. They can say, come and have a chat with us. Even if it's not now, it might be the conversation that in a year's time lands you your next big thing. It is the way of saying to the world, this is who I am, and creating your narrative. It's about personalizing your online presence. This is not you giving into the world dictating who you are. My LinkedIn profile says who I am. It shares my values. It talks about what I do, but it talks about how I do it in the way that matters to me. It talks about my mission, this podcast. It talks about why I get up every day. It is my place to share with the world, this is who Toni Collis is. It is not somebody else saying it for me. You get to control the narrative. You get to personalize your networking experience. You get to personalize how people find you. And more powerful than anything else is you get to tailor it for what you really are after. Your resume should be very fact-based. There is tailoring to be done, absolutely tailoring to be done, but it has to be very factual. LinkedIn is more of a story. So one other thing I just want to touch on before we go into some of the stuff you can do is, if you don't like LinkedIn, ask yourself why. Many of us don't like social media. I am one of those people. I have basically removed myself from much of social media except for professional reasons. So I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram, but honestly, for business. I am not there because I enjoy it. I have realized they're not good for my soul. I don't enjoy being on them. I just feel I get into a scarcity mindset and all that kind of stuff. But I would ask you, why is it that you don't like social media? What specifically is it about LinkedIn? And I want you to call yourself out on that. If in doubt, reach out to me. Tell me why you don't like them. Let's have a conversation about it. A lot of the time when we say we don't like something, the reasons aren't as solid as we want to say. And actually, a lot of the people I work with who say, I don't do LinkedIn. I don't update my profile. I don't like LinkedIn. It's more because they're afraid of how they're going to be judged if they do update their profile. When they change their job title, what are people going to think? If they do something, what's their employer going to think? Is somebody going to notice? The judgment piece is very fear-making. If that's your reason, I'm going to call you out, my love, that is not a good reason. That is not a good reason to not be on LinkedIn. That is fear talking. What do we need to do? We need to look fear in the face and we need to tackle it. We need to deal with it. Question I ask all the time as a coach is, what is the worst thing that can happen? Genuinely ask yourself that question. If you update something and somebody doesn't like it, what is the worst thing that can happen? So ask yourself, why don't you like LinkedIn? Why do you not like social media? Is this a reason to not participate in the LinkedIn experience? Is this you holding yourself back from something that could really open up doors because of a fear that is not serving you? That's the first thing to understand about yourself. The next thing to understand is, although this whole episode is about LinkedIn, LinkedIn is not sufficient. You can't do LinkedIn and not do other things. You can't do LinkedIn and not be in an important professional network for whatever industry you're in. You can't be on LinkedIn and not have a resume that is passing all the filters, that is tailored. You can't do LinkedIn and not submit cover letters. Oh my goodness me. Cover letters are a whole conversation. I probably talk to people about cover letters every single week with somebody going, no, just cover letters are old fashioned, including recruiters, by the way. And then I will get somebody who just tries out my cover letter experience for the first time and goes, now I see why you talk about it. But in my experience, LinkedIn is not sufficient. It is one piece of your toolkit. It is one piece of your job hunt toolkit, a very important piece. And it is one piece of your networking toolkit. It is one piece of this is who I am. You can't have an amazing profile on LinkedIn and turn up as a slob, right? In the same way that if you turn up to work every day, but you're not on LinkedIn, it's not serving you. You can't turn up on LinkedIn and not turn up as the leader that everybody needs to see you as. Your LinkedIn profile and the way you show up at work should be synergistic. The way you thoughtfully post things, the way you interact with people on LinkedIn, the way you talk about things on LinkedIn, the way you lift up your team, your employer, should resonate with how you behave at work. Ideally, you should post on LinkedIn about the work you do. Because if you are a leader, you are representing your company, whether you like it or not. So unless you're in a role where you're not allowed to post, your company probably would like it if you did post. More to the point, prospective employers want to see a leader who says, I'm proud of what I'm doing and I'm making a difference. And look how awesome we are. Salespeople all have this down. Other people often struggle with this until they become leaders and then they suddenly get it. At the end of the day, as a leader, the company needs to feel capable of putting you up on stage. I often say this to people. If you've ever had the comment about you need to work on your executive presence, your communication's not on point, there's something there which is basically somebody saying, I'm not sure I want her standing on stage representing our company or virtual stage, or there is something about the way you're showing up that's just making people uncomfortable that they can't necessarily put their hands on. And yes, there's bias towards us. We are more likely to be viewed uncomfortable if we're in the minority, so a woman in tech. But it's also just there's something going on. LinkedIn is a platform where you can start demonstrating I'm trustworthy. I can speak eloquently. I don't put my foot in it. This is how I recover from setbacks. Look, I can represent. I can be the leader who is proud of what she's doing. I can be the leader who's not just proud of what she's doing, but also is able to talk eloquently about the subject matter, come across as an expert. So people not just trust me, but trust the company I work for because I work for that company. But also, I can talk about things that aren't to do with my day job and people respect me even more. There's a reason we care about what you do outside of work, because we want to hire a whole human. Because people are the ones that make the buying decisions. They're the ones that decide whether or not to trust a company. And people trust people. People don't trust brands. They trust people behind the brands. So if you have your own personal brand on LinkedIn that is trustworthy and you are openly working for a brand, the people that might work with your company are thinking, oh, yeah, actually, that's somebody I might just trust. I'm going to check out that company. We very rarely buy from things we don't trust. Even buying just like clothing and food, a lot of the time we buy because we trust a person who's buying from that brand, right? When that company starts out, they're often looking for people to just try their products because then we trust that somebody else has tried the product, okay? So your LinkedIn profile is your way of building trust with everybody around you. But the problem with LinkedIn, that is kind of what we're going to talk about for the rest of this episode, is that the goalposts on LinkedIn are always moving. It drives me nuts. One side of it is how people are behaving is always evolving, right? I've certainly noticed people are a lot less responsive to messages on LinkedIn than they were 12 months ago. I think everybody's very tired of outreach on LinkedIn right now. And so what people are responding to is changing. But then the other thing that's changing on LinkedIn is the algorithm. And that is completely opaque. I've had people tell me, I used to work for LinkedIn, I know how it works, and I've chatted with them and I seem to know more than they do. So what happens on LinkedIn is a bit of a mystery. And so how you make sure that you come top ranked is a scientific experiment. This is what I say to all of my clients. We give you best practice on how to make a LinkedIn profile work, and then it's a matter of treating it as a scientific experiment, which brings me to item number 1 of your homework today. Whether you're job hunting or not, I want you to click over to your LinkedIn profile. So if you're on LinkedIn, go to your picture at the top right-hand corner. In that menu, go to view profile. Just scroll down a little bit. There's like 3 or 4 sections down, depending on how many sections you've got in your LinkedIn profile. There is view analytics. I want you to click on the bottom that takes you to, let me just check my profile as I do this. It actually says show all analytics. Show all analytics. I want you to have a look at that. In there, you should see post impressions if you post, how many followers you have. Note that followers and connections are different. How many people have visited your profile in the past 90 days, and how many times you've come up in search appearances. Now, all 4 of those numbers are really important. The 2 that I think are most important for anybody in a leadership position are your profile views and your search appearances. Now, if you're trying to build yourself a brand, if you're trying to build yourself a reputation as a leader, if you want to become, for example, a C-level executive at a big company, you need a followership and you need people looking at posts that you're posting. Most likely, not always, but it really does help. But for most of us, what we're most interested in is search appearances. So what you can do is click on the search appearances box, and then you'll get a breakdown of search appearances. So first of all, make a note of how many search appearances you had in the last week. I would actually get yourself a spreadsheet and start tracking this every Monday morning. Get that data, start tracking it. And then I want you to scroll down to the bottom of that information and look at the job titles that people search you for. So I often get business strategist, I get corporate trainer, interesting. I actually get salesperson, which I find fascinating because I don't think I have anything salesy in my profile, like sales language, but maybe. The most important thing for me is I get searched out as a CEO, and I do get people asking me to apply for CEO roles because that says to me my profile is well positioned. Right? And my profile is well positioned for the kind of work I'm doing. If you are getting the majority of I think they give you 5, maybe they give you more if you're getting more hits than I am. Bear in mind, I'm not looking for a role, so I never want to be employed ever again. I run my own business and I love it. But if I was still in the corporate fast track, I'd be wanting 100 search appearances a week or more. And I'd be wanting roles, and the majority of the roles in that top 5, you're always going to get a couple of weird ones. So don't panic if you have weird ones. But I want several of those roles to be very relevant to who I am. If they are not, that means you need to work on your profile. And that's so, so important. Working on your profile is why we are here. That's why this podcast episode exists. So that's the first thing. Go and have a look at your metrics. Then let's talk about your profile. Let's talk first of all about your headline. If your headline is just your job title, we need to have a serious chat. Your headline, the bit that's right under your name, follows you around on LinkedIn every time you post, every time you like, every time you send a message, every interaction on LinkedIn, they get your name and they get the first bit of your headline. Just saying you're a vice president of sales, quite frankly, is missing out a huge opportunity. If you can say what you are after. So maybe right now you're a director of engineering, but you know that you want to be a VP next, or at least a senior director. You know you've got the potential, or you know you've already got the experience, you just don't have the title. You need to somehow get that across in your headline. When a recruiter uses LinkedIn Premium, they will put in a whole list of search criteria. We're going to come to how to get into those search results in a few minutes. But they will put in a whole load of search criteria. And then they're going to quickly scan that list, looking at the headlines. They are not going to click onto every single profile. They're going to get a picture of your face. They're going to get your name. And they're going to get your headline. And that headline needs to speak to what they're looking for. So they click over to your profile and look for more information. Especially for anything above senior director, remember the majority of jobs at that level are not advertised. So you might see the odd one advertised. You've probably likely found that you don't get into those roles because guess what? They tend to be advertised because they're told they need to. They've already got somebody in mind. They've already got a long list. You don't even make it to the short list. What needs to be happening is executive recruiters need to find you on LinkedIn. Now, two things happen with this. One, they might decide that you are somebody who can go forward for the role they're recruiting for right now. But if not, is this executive recruiter thinks not quite the right fit, but somebody I need in my network. And they connect with you and you build a relationship with an executive recruiter. When you have relationships with executive recruiters, even though they're not going to remember you, like, please notice this. A few years ago, recruiters knew everybody in their black book. They were really good at keeping on top of the relationships, even if they had 1,000. Today, it's 10x that. It's 20x that. Some of the recruiters I know have 200,000 people in their network. You cannot know that many people. You just cannot. So stop expecting recruiters to stay on top of things. Stop expecting anybody in talent acquisition to know who you are. It's just not going to happen. I know it used to be like that, but it is not the world we're currently living in. We can have another debate about that if you think that's wrong, which I do, but that is not the world we're living in. So accept that this is what's happening and instead make sure that this person connects with you, because when they're connected with you, when they're searching either their database or their LinkedIn database, if you're connected, you will come up higher in the search results. So try and make sure that you're coming up in their search results in the first time, but more importantly, your headline is something that clicks over. So try things such as experienced engineering leader specializing in IPO or whatever it is you want to be known as. Ideally, you've already got the experience. I don't want you lying on your headline. I want that phrase to be, I'm open to a next step, rather than I'm currently a director of engineering. This is the box I'm in, and I'm not going to look at anything else. You want to demonstrate your capability for the role you're after, not the capability for the role you're in. And I know so many of you have way more experience than the role you're in. You need to get that across. So play with your LinkedIn headline. Next, if you've got them with your LinkedIn headline, to click over to your profile. And what we want to do is play with your LinkedIn headline and then watch it for a couple of weeks and see if your search appearances go up, right? If they are, your LinkedIn headline is working. People are clicking on your face because they like what they're hearing on your LinkedIn headline. So then you need to be working at your profile. Some would argue you do this first. I think chicken and egg. If you're going to work on your profile to get more search results, great. So you should do that before your headline. But you're also going to work on your profile in order to tease the person who's clicked over to actually like invite you to something, to connect with you, or to invite you to a recruitment round, or to have a networking conversation, whatever it is. The most important thing to remember about LinkedIn is this is not your resume. It is very different from your resume. First up, your about section. This is a story. This is your cover letter to the human race. So it's a generic cover letter that says, this is who I am. This is why I'm awesome. And I know many of you are going to shrink back from that bit, but I deliberately say it right up front because I know it's triggering. We need to get over it. But you are awesome at whatever it is you do. The thing that you think to yourself, I don't understand why I'm paid to do this. Why does everybody else find this so hard? I just genuinely don't believe it. That's the thing you're awesome at, my love. You probably think every day, I cannot believe people think this is hard. I don't understand why people pay me so much for this. That's the thing you're awesome at, okay? It's so hard to see. And you need to share that with the world. You need to share how you're changing things. You need to share how you've come to where you are. You need to share why you do what you do. If you're on a path to doing something extraordinary, share why. That's what goes in your LinkedIn profile. So whenever I do this with clients, we do a first pass, which is kind of like a history. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I'm doing next. And then we go through and do keyword changes. So we're looking at, okay, the roles I want next. These are the keywords that we need to be putting in. And we change the sentences to get more of those keywords in there. And then we look at people's search appearances for 2 weeks and look at the data. Does it go up? And we can do an all-in approach. So I have done the case where we've done a whole, let's update everything on LinkedIn, just get it out there. I'm kind of the mind now, if you can go slow, if you're not desperate for a job, do one thing at a time and see how it affects your data. The data is noisy anyway, because some weeks some people will be hiring, other weeks other people will be hiring. It's not like every week there's 100 people hiring for a role. And the question is, if you get 40 or 99, right? It's not that simple, but we're kind of looking for change, which is why at least 2 weeks, ideally a bit more. Next is your experience section. Again, this is not your resume. This is the closest bit to your resume. And what I would say here is I treat this a lot like I would suggest you treat the majority of your experience on your resume, in that you want to share impact. You want to say, I achieved this thing in this much time. We generated revenue. I was responsible for 100 people. We pushed this project out the door. Impact, impact, impact. And then something that appeared last year in 2024 on LinkedIn is you can now link this explicitly with your skills. I've not done this. I kind of go backwards and forwards on whether this is worth doing. I haven't got clear data yet, but if in doubt, link it with your skill set. And by the way, remove some of your skills that aren't relevant. If you are coming up in search results that are nothing to do with the job you want, remove skills that are old or irrelevant. I had to give this pep talk just before Christmas. If you're afraid of removing your skills because the majority of your endorsements are for specific skills that are out of date, this is a really big problem. The skills that you have endorsements for are likely in the algorithm. And as I said, it's a bit opaque on LinkedIn. But because you've got endorsements, they're going to be weighted higher than your other skills. So actually, if these are skills for an individual contributor, for a role you had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's actually really, really important to get rid of them, because they are probably meaning that your other skills are actually being ranked lower in the algorithm than if you had no endorsements. So here's what I recommend doing. Go to a skill that you know is not relevant to your new role, to the next role you want that has endorsements, and click on the people that got endorsements. Use this as an opportunity to reach out. Go to their profile, endorse them for something, and then send them a message saying, I saw you endorsed me for this a while back. I'm actually updating my profile and I'll be removing that skill. If you'd be willing to do so, I'd really appreciate you endorsing me for X, Y, or Z, as these are the skills that I'm now trying to promote on LinkedIn. I've actually just endorsed you, but if there's anything else you'd like me to endorse you for, as I know LinkedIn profile building is a skill that's really important, just let me know. I would expect about 50% of the people that you do that with will give you an endorsement for a new skill. So there you go. Go tidy up your skills, link them into your experience section. Your about section, your headline, and your experience section are the three most important sections. I almost would say get rid of everything else. Get rid of everything else, right? So those are the most important things to do with your profile. The one final thing I want to talk about today is networking. As you mentioned, it is probably the number one thing you need to be thinking about. So how do you get started networking on LinkedIn? First up, have a look at your connections. Who have you not spoken to for 6 months? Reach out, ask them for a virtual coffee chat. Ask them if they'd be willing to get on Zoom and touch base. Get on Zoom, touch base with one person a week. You start networking. Bonus. In that coffee chat, ask them how they're getting on. Don't ask them for a job. Don't ask them if they know of any opportunities that are useful to you. Ask them how they're getting on. Solve a problem. What's going on in their life that they're struggling with? How's their work going? Have they thought of this thing that you're good at doing? Solve a problem for them. Give them an idea. And then at the end say, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I'm actively building my network. Is there anybody else you think would benefit from knowing me? And then ask for an introduction. That's your ask, not a job. Not, do you know anybody else who's got a job or who's hiring? No, ask for an introduction. Ask for an introduction after solving a problem. This is the thing most people do not understand about networking. Networking is not about asking for jobs. We're all overwhelmed and exhausted by that. Solve problems. If you do that enough, what you'll find is your network will expand because people are introducing you. In my experience, you will get fewer than 10% today of people that you reach out to cold responding. If you don't know them and reach out to them, 10%. It used to be 20, it's getting worse. But if you get an introduction, it's 50% or higher will respond. So that is the way to expand your network. The best ones are when you have a coffee chat and it results in 3 introductions. And your network starts expanding exponentially, and it's just amazing. You don't have to do any work. It just happens. You just have to have coffee chats with people. You just have to solve problems, which you're awesome at in the first place, right? So that's how to network using LinkedIn. It's not rocket science, but it is the best thing. My final thing would be track your networking. Get yourself a spreadsheet. And if you are not actively job hunting, you want to aim for a coffee chat a week with your existing network, which will grow your network slowly. If you're actively job hunting, the more the better. Ideally, 10 coffee chats a week. That's a lot of outreach. See how you get on, but put more effort into networking than you do into applying for jobs, because unless you're going for a director or below, networking is likely the thing that's going to land you a job. I'd love to know how you're getting on. I'd like to know your metrics on LinkedIn. If this is like, oh my gosh, I should be looking at my metrics, go look at your metrics and come and tell me. Join the Leading Women in Tech Network. Tell me in our Slack channel, in our Slack community, what are your metrics? I would love to know. And then if you are still struggling, that's why me and my team are here. We are passionate about making sure every one of you who is out of work this year lands your dream job. That is just so incredibly important. There are so many of you struggling, and it blows my mind. There's so much talent out there that is not landing dream jobs. So if you are struggling, come and have a chat with me. Or if you just need some work on your executive presence, come and have a chat with me. You can always find me on LinkedIn, click to my profile and you can book an appointment with me, or head over to the show notes and I'd be happy to chat with the link that's in there. Until next time, remember, stay in your tech leadership game and follow your dreams, because the world really does need that uniqueness that you bring as a leading woman in tech.